Welcome back to Settlement Nation podcast. Today is a day I know that many of you have been asking me about a million times, the return of former Green Beret, Army Ranger, West Point grad turned successful entrepreneur, Jason Van Camp. Welcome, Jason.
Thanks for having me back. It's an honor to be here. It's always fun, and I'm excited for the show because it's going to be a good one.
Your episode actually was our most popular episode of last year, which I don't know if you know that, but I had the most comments about it. A few people I let it in, told them actually that I was recording this with you today. They're very excited. They bought your book after listening to the episode.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm excited because I like it. It's the perfect mix of, as we say, battlefield to the boardroom, actionable steps that people can take to kind of add to their lives. But just to recap our last episode, because we've got thousands of new listeners since then, and they may have not heard the episode, which was episode 47. So I just want to kind of take them back really quick and give them a little recap about your book, first of all, because we do take a lot of our topics today from your book, Deliberate Discomfort, and also what we spoke about last time. So just a quick recap of the book. It follows the journey of Jason, which is Jason on this show, as a new Green Beret commander taking over a team of combat-hardened Special Forces veterans. This true story tells firsthand the intense, traumatic battles these individuals fought and won, sharing lessons learned from their incredible backgrounds. Deliberate Discomfort is the ultimate book on leadership and self-improvement, depicting how these warriors found a way to win under incredible odds with never quit attitudes. And Jason, as a leadership coach, you didn't just write this book out of thin air. This all came from your own experiences. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, it's a book about my life and my experiences, not just in the military, but also in business. And so I come into this book just after I earned my Green Beret, and I'm reporting to my unit for the first time. I'm talking to my boss, my commander, and he says, Jason, we're going to combat in just a few weeks, and you're going to be in charge of this A-team, this Operational Detachment Alpha, this ODA, this team that is full of these guys that are experienced, that have been to combat before, that are Special Forces, Green Berets, the guys that have been there, they've done that, they know what they're doing. And now you, as the brand new guy, you're going to be in charge of them. And in order for you to not only survive, but thrive and succeed and do well on your team and in combat, there are some things that I need you to understand, some things I need you to know. And he takes me through sort of his leadership philosophy. And then he says, there are people in this organization that I would consider the backbone of this organization, like the people that really make this organization what it is. Because I'm just one guy, and I need you to meet with these individuals and learn from them, find out what makes them tick, and adopt a similar mindset if you expect for me to give you command of this team. And so each chapter is me speaking to a different individual, finding out who they are, listening to their stories about resiliency and about why they chose to do the things, voluntarily, deliberately chose to do the things they did. And then I report back to my commander in the final chapter. So I come in as a novice, as a rookie, as a young guy, willing to learn, willing to put on my white belt. And at the end of it, it's like, hey, listen, my eyes are open. I'm ready to do more now. And that's what the book is really all about.
And for anyone who hasn't read the book, I suggest after this podcast, you go buy it. But going back quickly to our last episode, I want to cover a few of the really cool things that I loved that we covered. And some of them were, I'm just going to say out some keywords, which made me laugh. The first one was embracing the suck.
Yeah.
Do you just want to just do a sentence or two about what that even means? Because I know a lot of people, they thought that was so funny, but so true.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Life is hard. And if it's not hard, it should be hard. You're not living life the right way. And most of the time, in life, you find yourself in situations that are bad, and you just have to deal with it. You don't just deal with it. You open your arms and welcome it in as you would an old friend. This person to suck well, because just when you think things can't get any worse, the suck shows up. But the suck isn't a bad thing. It's there to make you stronger and tougher. And it's arrived to make you better. And instead of complaining about it, I want you to celebrate the suck. And that's what embracing the suck is all about, is saying, you know what? Life is hard. Let me make it a little bit harder. You know what? Life is hard. Well,
Mhm.
good, because it's making me stronger. That's what it's all about.
I love that. That's one of my favorite things from last episode. And another one that was really important before we move on to our important topics for today is trust but verify. What is that all about?
So that's something that President Ronald Reagan said, in the 80s when he was referring to the Russians, trust but verify. And for me, it means this. When you're a young officer in the military, you ask other officers and other non-commissioned officers, hey, how do you succeed? What do I need to do to be successful? And you'll get a very common answer. Hey, trust your NCOs, your non-commissioned officers, the guys that are the blue-collar guys that have been there a while. And you think to yourself, at least I did, okay, great. That's exactly what I'll do. And when I reported to my boss in chapter 1, he's like, how did that work out for you so far in your career, Jason? And I was honest with him. I said, it hasn't worked out that well. It's like, because you're blindly trusting people that you don't know. Just because somebody has a couple of chevrons in a rocker, a uniform insignia rank on their shoulder, doesn't mean that you should trust them. You should give them the benefit of the doubt. Surely you could believe in them, but trust is different than belief. Trust is built over time, through actionable trust building activities. So you believe in someone in the beginning, and then you build trust together, and trust goes both ways. And that verify means that every time you do something together, you ask somebody to do something for you, they're essentially building trust. And if it's a big activity, they get a lot of trust. If it's something small, they get a little trust. But you're verifying that they did what you asked them to do at the conclusion of every event. And so that's what it's all about, is like, don't trust just anybody because, you go to the doctor and they say you have terminal cancer. Like, don't trust that. Go get a second opinion. That's what it's all about. Verify that.
I like it. And if anyone is that's piqued their interest, that is episode 47. Today, we are moving on to 2 chapters in Deliberate Discomfort, and we're kind of pulling our talking points from there. Chapter 2, which is the team, and chapter 3, which is the self. Both critical components, I think, to anyone's life, whether you're in the military or a civilian. Jason, before we begin with the team, do you want to talk a little bit about that chapter and kind of why you even added it in the book in the first place?
Chapters 2 and 3 then. So chapter 2 for me is about self-determination, about inspiration and motivation. And to me, it's about when people say, Jason, motivate me, just motivate me. I need that motivation. And I always say the same thing. I was like, I can't motivation. I'm not going to try. And they always look at me confused, quizzically. And they're like, well, isn't that what you do? I'm like, well, no, it's not. Because, motivation is, the only true motivation is self-motivation. Because I'm not going to be there for you in the morning to get you up out of bed. I'm not going to be there to hold your hand and walk you to the gym. I'm not going to be there to hold your weights for you. I'm not going to be there. Only you are. The only thing I can do is inspire you to motivate yourself. And when you motivate yourself, you take action, whether it's getting out of bed at 4:30 a.m., getting one foot on the floor, or driving to the gym, or eating healthy. You take action. Even if it's something small, you see some results. Maybe it's a big result, maybe it's a small result, but no matter what it is, when you see a result, you get excited because you see change, you see progress, and that inspires you. So you're inspiring yourself. And so it comes full circle where it's inspiration, motivation, action, results, inspiration. And chapter 2 is sort of about that self-determination theory, self-awareness, social intelligence, being on a team. The mission comes first, then the team, then your teammates, and then yourself. And then chapter 3 is about flow. It's about flow state and self-awareness and how you get into that flow state and so forth.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of teams, we're all on teams. If you're an attorney listening, you have paralegals, you have other attorneys, you have all the people that are part of your company or your wider team. First of all, why is it important for a team to be reminded of their vision?
So that question reminds me of training, and also combat in the military, where we have a real mission or a mock mission, and we're out in the woods or in the desert or wherever, and it's at nighttime, and it's cold, and the conditions aren't great, and you're carrying something very heavy on your back, and your arms are tired because you're carrying, a weapon and you're in a formation where you're trying to be as quiet as possible and you're walking. And whether it's in training or in combat, you let your team know what the mission is and what the vision is and what we're going to accomplish before you leave. But very quickly, as you start walking, people are going to start thinking. It's going to get quiet. They're going to start to doubt. What are we doing? Like, why are we doing this? They're going to let those negative thoughts creep in. Are we lost? Are we going the right direction? Hey, we're going the wrong way. And all of a sudden, those negative thoughts are no longer doubts, but they're facts in their minds. And then they start complaining, and they start complaining out loud, and then they become undisciplined, and then they start to let this lack of discipline creep in. And so what I always did is I was proactive about turning around to my team and telling them this: hey, this is where we are, guys. This is where we're going. This is how far we have left to walk. This is the azimuth. This is the pace count. This is how long before we get there. And this is what I need you to do. And then we walk a little bit further. And before they got a chance to start complaining again, I'd turn around and say the exact same thing to them. I'd let them know why we're doing this. This is the vision, guys. We have to continue to remind you that this is why we're doing the things that we are. This is the reason behind it, because if they don't get that, they're going to start to think, and those negative thoughts get in there, and then they go off tangent and bad things happen.
And as you said, I think that can be applied to so many things. You're speaking about this from your experience, and obviously running a big company like you do too, having to apply the mission to and the vision to what everyone does to keep everyone aligned. Speaking of the mission and failure, there's people sometimes, and probably you've dealt with this many times, they don't want to sacrifice their personal agenda or their ego for what you're all over there to do. Can you talk a little bit about that?
That's a great question as well. I'm telling you, all these questions are great because they are great.
Yeah.
Courtney, you're great. You are great. You really are great. This show is awesome.
Thank you. Listen, I love a mid-show plug, so that makes me super happy.
So sacrifice, right? So a friend of mine, we were having this discussion a few years ago, and we were looking at college football coaches. And some of them had these amazing resumes that had been successful in other locations. And we had a discussion like, why are some successful and others are not successful? And what it came down to for me, the decision that I made, the result was, I think it comes down to sacrifice. And I think that's the key. The key to success in life is sacrifice. Why do some people win and others lose? It's about what they're willing to sacrifice to get to where they want to go. It's not a sacrifice unless you're sacrificing something valuable and important. And that sacrifice could be your sleep, time, money, reputation, pleasure, family. It's risky to use energy that could be used on yourself for something or someone else. And I think that's the key that I talk about in chapter 2, where we look up. I'm using energy that I could have used for myself, that I could have used to help me hold this log over my head. But instead, I'm using that energy, sacrificing that energy to help someone else out. And in doing so, I won, and that person won as well. And I think that's the key, really. It's this whole life is about sacrifice. What are you willing to sacrifice to get what you want? And for some people, when you really look in the mirror and you're presented opportunities, you say, I'm not willing to sacrifice that. That's great. That's fine. That's as far as you're willing to go. And you have to accept that. Say, like, based on what I'm willing to sacrifice, this is what I need to be happy with in my life. However, if I want more, then I have to sacrifice more. And you have to sacrifice something that's important to you and valuable to you, or else it won't work.
That's probably the most important part of all of this is something you just said, is the sacrifice has to be both valuable and important, because you can't just go, well, I'm not going to do this thing that I never do, and that's my sacrifice. I think it actually has to, it has to hurt. There has to be, in metaphorical terms, a bit of blood spilt for that sacrifice to really mean something. Something you just actually said, which is by far my favorite part of what I've read so far, is the look up story from your book. And I'm going to quote you. You actually said, when the pressure is on and you're on a team, it's never about you, which I love. I think that is gold. Can you talk a little bit more about that story where the looking up kind of epiphany came to you?
Yeah. So it was an epiphany. It was an aha moment where for me, it was about, I'm in a situation for the listeners, and maybe you haven't heard it before. I'm in a situation where this is the first day of Special Forces selection. And they try to weed out everybody, and they do something called log physical training, log PT. So we have these big 200, 300-pound logs. You hold them as a team. I guess there's about 8 or 10 guys on a team. And you hold the log over your head. You put the log from one shoulder to the next. You do bicep curls with the log. You get on the ground on your back, and you do kind of inverted push-ups with logs. You do relay races with logs. You do all these things with these logs, these stupid, heavy-ass logs that you hate, right? And people are quitting left and right, because it's just like, this sucks. I don't want to do this. I'm too tired and all this stuff. And as you're doing this for hours, right, there comes a point where nobody's really saying anything. It's quiet. You hear some people cursing under their breath. You hear some people quitting. You hear some people puking, and everyone's breathing hard, And in that moment, you really find out who you are and who the people are to your left and to your right. And why it's quiet is because everyone is sort of conserving energy for themselves. Like, I need to hold this log up as long as I possibly can. I don't want to cramp up. I don't want to, do anything stupid to lose energy, right? And as I was doing this, I lifted my head up, and nobody had their head up. I lifted my head up, and that used energy that I could have used on myself, And I looked around, and some people might think, oh, you're a dumbass, it's stupid. Why are you doing that? Why are you looking around? Focus on yourself. And as I was looking around, I saw other teams, other guys holding logs. They were suffering just as bad as me. And I noticed a guy across on another team. His name was Pat. I knew him from college. And he looked up as well, for whatever reason. I had that same sort of inspiration, intuition to lift his head up as well. And we locked eyes, and he started first. He said, let's go, Jay. Let's go, Jason. You got this. And I said something back to him, let's go, buddy. Something, don't remember what I said. And all of a sudden, by saying that, other people started lifting their heads up. Not everybody, but a lot of people did. And they started shouting words of encouragement back at each other. And then the next thing you know, we're excited again. And next thing you know, instead of focusing on ourselves, we're focusing on each other. And the log felt lighter. In reality, the laws of physics didn't change. The log all of a sudden didn't become lighter. It was still heavy, but it felt lighter. Mm-hmm. The weather was still hot out, but all of a sudden it just didn't feel as hot. It felt like our legs got more strength. It felt like I could last a lot longer. And it was interesting because, as we did that, we were able to get through that collectively as a team together. And I don't know if I told you this last time, but flash forward about 2.5 years down the road, where we're getting our Green Berets for the first time. We're graduating. We're in formation. I've got my Green Beret in my cargo pocket. And, there's a big to-do thing. Everybody's in formation, and friends and family member are there. The general's up on stage, and he's going to say, don your Green Beret. And I looked around again, and I was shocked. I had another epiphany. I was so surprised. I'll never forget. I looked around to my left and to my right, my front, to my back, and I was like, man, all these guys in formation with me are all the guys that lifted their heads up on day one.
Wow. I was going to ask you, actually, out of the people that looked up, did they make it through to the end, or was there a common theme between those guys that you saw?
The guys that lifted their heads up, I would say 90, 95, 99% of them made it all the way to the end. And the guys that didn't lift their heads up on day one, one day, they didn't make it. And so when you're like, what does it take for someone to get through this? I'm like, man, give me one day. One day I'll do this exercise and I'll see the guys and that lift their heads up. And I can tell you with fairly high confidence, when you're like, expose your heart, let's see what you have inside. How can we measure those intangibles? That's one way to do it. Who lifts their head up? Who helps other people? Who sacrifices what's important and valuable to them for somebody else or something else? Those are the people that have that something else inside of them to get it done. Yeah,
that's very, very important. I really like that. And, that is a great, obviously, military example. But in terms of that, like shared suffering, you went through a shared experience. The leaders popped out. They're there to the end. How do you think you could apply this for our listeners into like a civilian setting? So in their business, how can you apply this like looking up kind of epiphany?
Well, I'll tell you another story. And I'm going to show you share this picture with you after the podcast, and you could use it maybe, for the effects. So
yes, would love to.
I've got a buddy, his name's Brian Meyer, and he's a triple amputee Marine. And the first time I met Brian was a veteran event, and he was standing sort of by the bar with another guy. I said, I want to talk to this guy. So I walked up to him and introduced myself. And he said, I'm Brian, I'm Jason, and he said, are you a Marine? I'm like, no, I'm a Green Beret. I'm like, I guess you're a Marine. He's like, yeah, man, I'm a Marine. I said, what did you do in the Marines? And he said, well, I was a senior explosive ordnance disposal technician. I was a bomb tech. I dismantled bombs, I said, oh, that's cool, and he looked down at himself, and he's a triple amputee, and he looked up at me and he said, clearly I wasn't very good at my job, and so I laughed at that, and he laughed, and we became really close. We became friends, and we got to know each other over the course of a few years. And he came to my house in Utah, and eventually I was confident enough to ask him. I said, hey, Brian, let me ask you this, man. What happened the day that you got blown up? And he started telling me the story. He's like, well, Jay, let me tell you this. I actually have a picture, just a few seconds, maybe a minute after I got blown up. Do you want to see it? And I was like, hell yeah, I want to see it. Show me this thing. And so he pulled out his phone, and he had this picture on his phone. And this picture is him laying on the ground. Just after he got blown up. He's got bandages over his right arm and his left arm. He's bleeding out. It's cold, hard dirt. You can see his team working on him, putting tourniquets on him, stopping the bleeding. There's burnt up, blown up candy wrappers laying by him. It's a powerful picture, a picture that, when anyone ever asks me, hey, what's war like? I feel like I should just show them this picture because this is what it's like. And as I was studying this picture and just looking at it, just absorbed in this picture, just fascinated by it, I could see his face, and he's smiling. He's smiling big, and he's laughing. And you can't not see it. It's so noticeable. And I said, well, Brian, let me ask you, man, why were you smiling? Like, were you delirious? Were you on morphine? Like, what was going through your mind? And he said, well, Jay, here's the thing, man. I was the leader of my team. And we had a mission that day. We had a lot more IEDs, improvised explosive devices, to dismantle. And I wanted to make sure that they were okay so that they could continue the mission, so they weren't shook up by what they just saw. And so I just tried to make them laugh. I'm like, you did? He said, yeah, I was just telling them jokes. And he was like, you remember that joke, that movie with Will Ferrell, Ricky Bobby, he's the race car driver, Talladega Nights. I'm like, yeah, I remember that. It's like, well, we watched that movie as a team recently, and there's a part in the movie where Will Ferrell's getting interviewed, and he's raising his hands up. He's like, I don't know what to do with my hands. And so I'm like, I know where this is going, Brian. He's like, yeah, I was just raising up what was left of my hands, and I was saying, I don't know what to do with my hands to try to make my team laugh, And I thought to myself, man, here's a kid. He's 19 years old. He just got blown up. There's a very real possibility that he's going to die. At the very, very least, he knows he's going to be a multiple amputee for the rest of his life.
Mm-hmm.
He has catastrophically changed the direction of his life. His identity has changed. And instead of focusing on himself, I've been in situations where guys have been blown up and guys have been injured. And I can tell you, very rarely do guys focus on anyone else but themselves in that moment. And I can confidently tell you that if I was in a situation like that, I don't know if I would have handled it well. However, Brian did. And we use that term, mission, team, teammate, self, in that order, and those priorities all the time in the military. And very, very rarely do you see somebody who actually lives by those principles, those priorities. And Brian did. He's a guy who cared more about the mission than he did himself. He cared more about his team than he did himself. He cared more about his teammates than he did himself. And for me, having met a guy like that and having met guys like that, if I were to go back to combat and get blown up and something were to happen to me, I would now handle it a lot differently because I know these guys and how they've handled it. And I said, if they can do it, they've shown me a template, a path, a way where I can possibly do it as well. And so as far as what do you do when this pressure is on, shared suffering and military concept, you got to understand a few things. One, you got to buy into the vision and the mission of your company in the civilian world. And the best way to do that is for your company your team, your boss to buy into you first. Second is your team and your teammates. You have to have some level of commitment and camaraderie and relatedness with that team. How do you do that? You get to know them. You have conversations. You care about them. And if you do your best to care about them and you don't care about them, find a new team, find some new teammates, because life isn't worth living if you don't live this way, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And I completely agree with that. And the story you just shared is very, very powerful and actually leads in perfectly to what we wanted to cover next, which is resilience. It sounds like your friend has, truckloads of resilience, more than most of us. I mean, I get upset when I get a splinter. So,
and that's okay.
Talking,
we all do, but you're going to let it affect your life. You know what I mean? That's the key.
I have to be tougher. You're going to help me though, Jason. So, speaking about the self-resilience grit, we chatted a little bit about this before we came on air. I think there is a shift, and I don't know whether it is, countrywide or universal, but I feel like we have kind of gone away from a lot of those values of the resilience, having that grit, that staying power that I feel like, maybe people in the military, they have that, but you would see maybe in older generations where now it's a lot easier just to not do things you don't want to do. Because you just don't feel like it. And most of our life, as you said at the beginning, things are not supposed to be easy, but there's a massive reward that comes from doing the hard things. I want to talk a little bit about, identity and purpose. How can individuals, first of all, go about developing a sense of self, purpose, and getting clear on their goals and WTF, why they're even here? What are they doing with themselves?
Yeah, no. So I look at it like this. Your identity changes as you go through life, meaning if you're going to go back to a high school reunion, the people at this high school reunion don't know who you are now. They know who you were when you were 18 years old, right? They don't know you're the person that, started this podcast and became a successful entrepreneur, that got married, that had children, that, went through sacrifices, that went to combat, that, whatever you went through in life, they don't know you now. They know who you were then. So who are you now? Well, a couple things you have to look at. One is, things that you do in life. For example, you lose your job, you get laid off, you get fired, you retire. Your job isn't your identity. It's just something that you did. It doesn't define you. You experience a traumatic injury like Brian Meyer. It's just something that happened to you. You get a divorce. Your divorce isn't your identity. It's just something you went through. So what is your identity? And so for me, it comes down to who you are. What are your values? And so what we do is at my company, we do a values exercise. And so we have a list of between 200 and 500 values and say, all right, what resonates most with you? And then we kind of go through these values until you come to about 3 or 5 different values that mean something to you. And you say, this is who I am. This is what I believe. These values sort of define me. And for me, determination, resourcefulness, and loyalty really define me. Those are my values. And so when I meet someone else that also shares those values, like we become best friends. Like we hit it off. We resonate right off on the same frequency, And it doesn't mean that if you don't have those values, we can't be friends. Certainly we can. But it means that those values drive my decisions in life. So much so that when I'm at my businesses, when I'm in charge of an organization, it's like, okay, who are we as a company? Well, the company is me. The buck stops with me. It has to come from me. So these are the values that we believe in this organization. And let me define those values for you so you can understand what we do here. And so I think the first thing is find out your values, and then you can identify sort of who you are as a person.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. And this is a question for you personally, going through the military, you've been to combat multiple times, you've been through all the different schools and trainings and all the things that they put you through. There probably were times where you're just like, I do not want to be here. Like, I would rather be at home in the hot tub, having, a Coke Zero, watching the football instead of being anywhere but this place right now.
Yeah.
How did you maintain your resilience to be like, you know what, not today. Like, I'm going to keep going.
Not today. I'm going to keep going. Well, first, for me personally, I would say those things or repeat those things in my mind. Like, not today. I'm going to keep going. And then I try to paint the picture that, there's a time limit. Like, this isn't going to last forever. I don't know when it's going to end, but it's going to end sometime. And I might as well enjoy it in the moment. I'm a pretty funny guy. I try to be funny. I try to have a sense of humor, especially when things are the darkest. I think you find a lot of successful military guys, that's what they do. They have dark humor. They find, laughter and uncommon things, And so I tried to look at things either that I was doing or that someone else was doing and just laugh about it. Like, how ridiculous is this situation? And then I think to myself, okay, I would rather be somewhere else doing something else. Okay, what would I be doing? Okay, watching TV, I've done it 5 million times. Not missing out on anything. Reading a book, got plenty of time to read that. Sleeping, yeah, that would be nice, but as soon as I lay down, I'll have the hardest, most pleasurable sleep ever because I'm going to be so tired. So the longer I last, the better the sleep will be. Taking a shower, yeah, that would be nice to take a shower right now. I'm drenched in sweat and mud, and I haven't taken a shower in days. That would be nice, but in the moment, I can wash my hands. That'll make me feel better. I can just do that. What else would I be doing? Watching football on TV. Yeah, who cares? My team suck. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to lose anyway. You know what I mean? Like, just tell yourself these things, and pretty soon, like, you realize that it's not a big deal, and you're in the moment, and you're focused in the moment, and you're important. Whatever is in the moment is important to you because you're making it important. And I promise you, when you look back on your life, you don't remember those times when you were in the hot tub or watching TV or whatever. You remember those times when it sucked the most. And then that also reminds you, that you have undeniable proof that you did those hard things and you are who you say you are. And you can do even harder things because you did that. And I think growing up playing sports and as a kid, all that stuff, like the simple lessons that your dad or your mom teach you, like, hey, no matter how many times you fall down, get up. And the quicker you get up will determine your success. And for me, that was just so ingrained in me as a young kid, like just keep getting back up, keep fighting, that it's my identity. That's just who I am. Like, I'll get knocked down. Hell yeah. I'll lose. Hell yeah. I'll fail. Absolutely. But guess what? I'm not going to quit. I'm going to keep coming after you. And it's a battle of attrition, just when you're about to quit, it's exactly the moment when somebody else will quit. And so all you have to do is just keep getting back up.
Yeah. And I think it's your friend Rob O'Neill that has that saying. It's like, don't quit today, like quit tomorrow. Basically, just wait, just do one more day. And then when it gets to tomorrow, then I'll quit tomorrow, but don't quit today. And obviously, I mean, there's no one better than Rob, who's an icon for everyone who doesn't know. He, is involved with Jason's organization called Warrior Rising, which we'll talk more about at the end. It's helping veterans with their businesses. It's a great organization. But yeah, I love that quote by him because it's so true. It's like, just hang on 24 hours and then you can quit tomorrow. And if you keep doing that, you'll never quit. So
that's right. That's right. But quitting, we quit every day. Like if you look at it like this, let me frame it this way. You woke up in the morning, well, you quit sleeping. Mm-hmm. You had to use the bathroom in the morning, well, you quit holding it in. You fell asleep at night, you quit staying awake. There's things that we quit every single day. And it isn't necessarily a bad thing. You just have to decide what is important to you and decide, like I said, voluntarily, deliberately choose to not quit the things that are important to you.
Mm-hmm. So Jason, what are some things, we've got thousands and thousands of attorneys listening to this podcast. What are some ways that they can cultivate a sense of resilience within themselves?
Perfect. Okay. One is that strong sense of knowing who you are, your values. The most successful people I know in life are people that didn't have to go and figure themselves out. Didn't have to get lost and do that. If you don't know who you are, that's okay. Commit to finding out who you are, because all the people that I'm friends with that are highly successful, personally, professionally, they know who they are and they don't deviate from that. The second I would say is surround yourself with people that push you. Don't surround yourself with yes men that tell you you're great, that tell you there's nothing wrong with you and that, you're the best and give you hugs all the time. There's a time and place for that. But you need to be around people that will push you, that will tell you the blunt, honest truth, the ground truth. Hey, listen, yeah, maybe you didn't make a good decision there. Hey, maybe this isn't true. Maybe that's not a good decision. Maybe you should be doing these things. I can't force you to do it. I'm just telling you what I think. But those people that you surround yourself with, you have to be able to trust them. They have to have proven themselves to you in some way, right? The third I would say is small doses of venom. Take small doses of venom every single day. Don't.
I like that.
Don't kill yourself. Don't poison yourself to death. But something small that's hard, that sucks. Every single day, choose to do one thing. It could be anything. It's all relative. What's hard for me might not be hard for you, and so forth. Courtney might be the best stretcher alive. She might be able to put her face past her kneecap. You know what I mean? And she's like, stretch, Jason, why do you want me to stretch? It's easy. Okay, fine. But if you're going to ask me to stretch, I'm like, okay, all right. Now I've got to gear myself up for this. I've got to sit down and, really mentally prepare myself to be tough to stretch this thing, Fourth is self-inspiring. Just like I said in the beginning, like that's the key. Inspiration leads to motivation, which leads to action, which leads to results, which leads to inspiration. So if you can find out how to inspire yourself, you're well on your way to success. Inspiring yourself to do those things that are hard. Inspiring yourself to meditate, to run, to go to the gym, to eat healthy, to read every single day, to call people that you had a falling out with, to listen to podcasts, to watch TED Talks, to get your work done, whatever it is that is hard for you, do laundry, find a way to self-inspire. And then the next one would be choose voluntarily, deliberately discomfort. Deliberate discomfort would be the next thing. Don't let someone force that upon you. Choose it. Mm-hmm. Choose that hard thing. And once you chose it, you need to have resolve, relentless resolve. Like you need to attack it, and whatever it is that's hard, get after it with that resolve. And I would say the next one is don't take things so seriously all the time. Meaning, a lot of times people are so dead set on winning that they lose focus of everything else. And if they don't win, it's catastrophic. And they think to themselves, I'm a loser, I'm a failure, I'm no good, things like that. Every loss is something learned. I've heard that, sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. And so in failure and loss, there is learning and there's improvement. And so look at it like that. And then the last thing I'll tell you for that is qualities that individuals need to improve themselves, to develop resilience is, my dad had a brain aneurysm when I was 9 years old, and severe deal. Went to the hospital, ambulance came to the house, took him to the hospital, and doctor came into the sort of the waiting room with me, my brother, my sister, my mom. And he pulled my mom aside and he was like, I'm sorry to tell you this, he's not going to make it through the night. So you could say your goodbyes. And so my mom was crying, and she took my brother and sister into the room, and my brother and sister were young enough, but they didn't really know what was going on. And then I went into the room, and my dad, what are your final words in life? He said, no matter how many times in life you fall down, get back up. And that was just impactful to me at the moment. And he took his own advice because somehow he pulled through. He got through the night and he was able to recover from that. And so that's what I'll leave you with as far as the key qualities is no matter how many times in life you fall down, get your ass back up quickly.
And, we've organically covered a lot of the things that we wanted to chat about today, which is amazing, which is the way a good podcast should work. But I kind of want to end the self with one final thing. I'm sure that there's people listening right now in their car, at the gym, in their office, and they're going through a really challenging time. There's stuff happening in their life, maybe within their control, not in their control. But do you have any advice for those people that are struggling today? What's a way that maybe they could pull themselves out of the funk or just reach down deep and find that grit to get through?
It's relative, and I'll tell you this. So Admiral McRaven will say, make your bed first thing in the morning. That's something hard. That's like a small dose of venom, But for me, it's not that difficult because I went to West Point. We had to make our beds every single morning. So if you were to say, Jason, make your bed in the morning, no big deal. We had to make our bed to an impossible standard with hospital corners and bounce quarters off the top of it. And, I don't know who said it, but I know it was a Navy SEAL. He's like, take cold showers in the morning. Okay. Well, I lived in Russia for 2 years. In April, they shut off all the hot water. And they don't turn it back on.
So it's mandatory.
So it's mandatory. You got to take a cold shower and eventually get used to it. Eventually you like it. It sucks at first. So you're going to say, Jason, take a cold shower. I'm like, not hard for me. What if you said, Jason, I want you to run an Ironman? So 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and then a 26.2 mile run back to back to back. Do that, Jason. I'm going to tell you, Courtney, that's really, really hard for me. It's going to take me a little while to train up for that, to actually do that. I got a buddy who lives down the street from me. He's called the Iron Cowboy. His name's James Lawrence. He's a ultra marathon guy. He's an Ironman guy. He did 50 Ironman races in 50 consecutive days in all 50 states. And then a couple of years ago, he followed that up by doing 100 Ironman races in a row. So he woke up every morning, did an Ironman, went to sleep, woke up, did it again for 100 days. So doing an Ironman for him is easy. Mm-hmm. It's another day, it's a walk in the park. It's just another day waking up. So it's all relative. So what should you do? Do something that's hard for you.
What is next for you? What's coming up in the calendar? What do we have to be excited about?
Lots to be excited about. This year's flying by. We're already in month 5. So gosh, halfway through this year, it feels like it just started. We have a number of events for Warrior Rising for the nonprofit that helps veterans start businesses. We have a couple big events. Washington, D.C., September 20th. Courtney, I'd love to see you there, you and Jacob. Salt Lake City, Utah, and Veterans Day, November 11th. Big business shower. We're trying to raise $1 million alone in that shower. We're going to have 1,000 people there. Then we're going to the Army Navy game in Boston on December 8th, 9th, and 10th, which is going to be an amazing experience out there. For Warrior Rising, we want to raise $4 million this year alone. We want to help 12,000 veterans this year alone. So things are on that trajectory. We're well on our way. We're excited about it. And for Mission 60, I got another book coming out. It's I'm working on it. I'm not far along on the book. There's a lot of, I think book number 2 is a weird situation because I've got such high expectations from book number 1. Mm-hmm. I'm just like, well, I want to make it even bigger and better and more powerful and deeper and darker. And so there's a lot of edits that go on every single day with book number 2, especially when it comes to the name of the book.
Right. I was going to say, you've got a following now. It can't suck. So I'm sure you're under a lot of pressure.
It can't suck. I'm gonna put that in the book. You got a following now. This can't suck, Jason.
Oh my God, I would love that. Yeah, put a forward note. This book's for Courtney. Hopefully, it doesn't suck. Thank you.
Yes, I'm writing that down right now.
That is amazing. And for everyone listening, like always, I'll add the links to Warrior Rising, Mission 60, and Deliberate Discomfort in the show notes where you can buy the book, get coaching from Jason if you want more of him in person. I guarantee it sounds great in the podcast, but when you look at this guy talking to you, you literally feel like you could punch a hole through a wall. So it's going to be awesome. And of course, you can get tickets to his events online. We'll add that too. But Jason, amazing episode. I mean, we're only a tiny bit through the book. So hopefully you will share some of your time with me coming up again. We can do this more. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, of course. Anything you need from me, I'm there. I'm glad that we're doing this. I've had a lot of fun today. Thanks for having me on. Have a great week.